Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar presented by SAMHSA's GAIN Center with the support of the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Today's webinar is titled Supporting Family Drug Court Participants Through Comprehensive Case Plans. We're in this together. And the two presenters today are Dr. Jefferson Freskin and Kelly Sutton. I am Erica Ihara, and I am a project associate at Policy Research Associates. Before we start the presentations, I have a couple of housekeeping items to review. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation and discussion do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of the Center for Mental Health Services, the Center for Substance Abuse Treatment, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. If you have any questions for the presenters during the webinar or in regards to the technology, please go ahead and use the Q&A pod to the right of your screen, and we will address as many of those questions as time permits. And we will also be conducting a couple of polls throughout the webinar and really appreciate your participation in these. So when you see a poll pop up on your screen, please enter your responses if you can. This webinar is being recorded and slides will be disseminated via the GAIN's listserv following the webinar. We will also notify you when the webinar recording is posted to SAMHSA's YouTube channel. And finally, a certificate of attendance will be available for download at the end of the webinar. And please note that this is for personal portfolio use only. It is not for CE or CEU credits. So we have ASL interpretation for this event today, and to view the interpretation, please go to Layout in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and be sure to hide non-video participants and then change the layout view to full screen. And then finally select View All. The interpreters for today are Corey Bruner and Trudy Gilbert. And there is also live captioning for this event. So to view live captioning, you can select the Accept button in the multimedia pod, which is in the lower right hand of your screen. And we recommend high contrast style for best visibility, and you can adjust the contrast there. So now I would like to introduce the agenda for today. So after me, in a few minutes, John Berg from SAMHSA will be giving some introductory remarks, and then the presentations from Jefferson Freskin and Kelly Sutton will follow. So for now, I would like to turn this over to John Berg, who is Senior Public Health Advisor at the Center for Substance Abuse Treatment at SAMHSA for some opening remarks. John, over to you.
Thank you so much, Erica. And I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Supporting Family Drug Court Participants Through Comprehensive Case Plans. We appreciate you taking time today to participate in today's informative webinar, which I'm sure you'll find the case. Family treatment drug courts are an important resource for communities to assist families that have family members with substance use disorders that contribute to child maltreatment and become involved with child welfare agencies and also the criminal justice system. SAMHSA is supportive of family treatment drug courts and provides funding for grants and training and technical assistance through SAMHSA's GAIN Center to the field through webinars like this and in many other ways. Families involved in child welfare who are also affected by substance use disorders benefit from a family-centered case plan. Developing comprehensive plans that truly reflect the strengths, challenges, and needs of all family members is essential. In this webinar, we'll explore the research supporting family-centered case plans, discuss ways to actively involve the parent, child, and family support system in both case planning and monitoring, and explain which elements the family-centered case plan should include. We know that the implementation and ongoing management of family treatment drug courts is complex and challenging, so we're very pleased to provide this webinar today and hopefully support you in this difficult but rewarding work. Today's presenters will share ideas on how community-based organizations can collaborate effectively with child welfare and other public agencies while creating a meaningful and manageable case plan for families. We are pleased to have Dr. Jefferson Freskin and Kelly Sutton present on this very important topic, and I want to thank them for taking time today to share their expertise. I would also like to thank great partners like Children and Family Futures for their ongoing work with family treatment drug courts and their support of what SAMHSA is providing. And also the Gain Center and their staff for their work in developing and facilitating today's webinar. And at this time, I will return it back to Erica.
Thank you, John. So I'd like to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Dr. Jefferson County, who is Senior Program Associate with the Center for Children and Family Futures. Many of you in the audience today are probably already familiar with her work. She has over 25 years of experience working at the local, state, and federal levels. And she has served previously as North Carolina Drug Treatment Court Manager, Senior Consultant for the National Drug Court Institute, Senior Research Associate with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, the Center for Urban and Regional Studies, and as Maternal, Infant, and Child Home Visiting Coordinator with the North Carolina Division of Public Health, Children, and Youth. She has provided technical assistance and training for numerous entities, and you can see some of them listed here, and is also published widely on a variety of topics such as treatment courts and public housing. Next slide, please. I'd also like to introduce Kelly Sutton, who is the first Judicial District Problem-Solving Court Coordinator for Family Integrated Treatment Court in Jefferson County, Colorado. And she oversees the daily operations of the treatment court program. She is also program director for a prevention and family recovery grant and a family dependency treatment court enhancement grant with OJJDP. And Kelly has 12 years of experience working in problem-solving courts in roles including providing in-home services and also serving as a caseworker and project lead. So I'd like to just share some observations about who is here today out in our audience. So many of you we're about evenly split between rural and urban communities, and then followed by the third category, suburban communities. And as for professional affiliations, many of you are calling in from judiciary and probation and parole, and government. So thank you all for joining us today. And I am, without any further delays, I'm going to turn it over to Jefferson County and Kelly Sutton to begin today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thanks so much to SAMHSA and the Gain Center for inviting us to talk with you today about family-centered comprehensive case plans. We're going to get started by launching our own poll to get folks thinking about their own case planning processes. And we recognize that comprehensive family-focused case planning is really challenging. We just want to get a sense of your practice. And so if you're not part of a family treatment court, please feel free to answer any of the questions that apply. For instance, we hope that adult criminal treatment courts work to create a single comprehensive case plan that incorporates probation, treatment, and court requirements, and that you actively include the participant and their family support system in developing the case plan. So as you go ahead and get started with completing that poll, I'm going to go ahead and get us started on today's presentation. Thank you to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention for their ongoing support of the Family Treatment Court movement and of the National Family Drug Court Training and Technical Assistance Program. Again, I am coming to you from the Center for Children and Family Futures and the OJJDP funded Family Drug Court Training and Technical Assistance team. As always, the opinions, findings, and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this presentation are those of us, the authors, and not the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Next. So today we're going to discuss the research supporting the development and use of family-centered comprehensive case plans. We're we're going to talk about how you can generate a family-centered case plan that reflects family voice and includes case plan requirements that are originating in child welfare, treatment, and the courts. And we're going to talk about how to establish processes that continue to actively engage the parent, child, and family in monitoring the case plan process throughout the entire child welfare case. Throughout this presentation, we will probably call it a family treatment court, but we recognize that these come by many names: family drug court, family drug treatment courts, dependency drug courts, all kinds of things. But what we're really saying is that same collaborative, community-based initiative that works to support parents, children, and families involved in child welfare who have substance use or co-occurring disorders. All right, how are we doing on our poll here? Just taking a look at, it seems like most folks work to coordinate the various case plans, but we have some who don't have a single case plan, but do try to avoid duplication and conflicting requirements. How do I move on to this next question? Sorry, I can't see the rest of the questions. Okay. All right, thanks. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Kelly, and she'll get us started by framing this discussion in Jefferson County's experience working on case planning. Kelly.
Thank you, Kirsten. So early after inception of our family treatment court, Jefferson County reviewed the outcomes of participants in the family treatment court versus the substance use disorder case population in child welfare. The team was able to review permanency outcomes, length of time in out-of-home care, and rates of recidivism. Unfortunately, we were not seeing the outcomes that we wanted to see. This sparked many meaningful conversations on how do we support parents who are involved in multiple systems. At that time, it was very evident that parents sometimes had 3 different case plans with 3 different agencies. We discussed how child welfare can work with our preferred treatment providers to create a unified case plan and also work with the criminal justice system, as many of our participants are on pretrial or probation. We adjusted our phase structure to better match treatment recommendations and outcomes. We recognized that parents were struggling to manage all 3, sometimes more systems, and the requirements weren't matching up. Child welfare was making treatment decisions, and treatment was struggling to work with families within the court and child welfare timelines, and probation had their own set of requirements. The team was able to look at these requirements from the different agencies and work to create a uniform case plan that also included the family voice. After making these changes, the team saw a reduction in the time that children spent in out-of-home care, increase in permanency with a parent, and also a reduction in recidivism. And over time, these outcomes have continued to improve. It was very clear that once we made these changes, outcomes improved almost immediately. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Kelly. So Kelly shared that Jefferson County decided that they needed to change how they did case planning after they looked at their data. They weren't getting the kinds of outcomes they wanted, and they decided that one major change they needed to implement was their case planning process. So in these next 2 slides, I just want to step us back for a minute and frame this discussion within the national data on the prevalence of parental substance use as the underlying cause of child neglect and abuse, and on how that neglect or abuse, if not addressed effectively through family-centered case plans and services, can contribute to further harm as children grow into the juvenile delinquent, adult criminal justice systems, or could even eventually have children of their own and end up in the child welfare system. So we know that between 60 and 80% of substantiated child abuse and neglect cases involve substance use by custodial parent or guardian. Further, about 61% of infants and 41% of older children who are in out-of-home care have a parent in need of treatment for substance use. And 87% of all families in foster care have one parent in need, and 67% have two parents in need of treatment. Next. And so when we think about case plans and services for parents and children involved in child welfare cases, we need to not only attend to the parent's substance use, but also to the children's physical and emotional health and developmental needs, and to the parent-child relationship. When we don't, we increase the likelihood that the neglected or abused child will become involved in the juvenile or adult justice systems. But when we do this right, we are interrupting that intergenerational cycle of harm. Next. The Family Treatment Court Best Practice Standards were released in September 2019. If you have not already, you will have an opportunity to download a copy of the standards at the end of this presentation. And Standard 6, Comprehensive Case Management Services and Supports for Families, really lays out the critical importance of comprehensive family-centered case planning and supports. And that overall provision, it talks about the Family Treatment Court ensures that children, parents, and family members receive comprehensive services that meet their assessed needs and promote sustained family safety, permanency, recovery, and well-being. And in addition to high-quality substance use and co-occurring mental health treatment, the Family Treatment Court's family-centered service array includes other clinical treatment and related clinical and community support services. These services are trauma responsive. They include family members as active participants, and they're grounded in those cross-systems collaboration and evidence-based or evidence-informed practices, implemented with fidelity. All right, next, please. The Standard 6 includes 11 provisions that further describe what it means to have comprehensive family-centered case plans. And today, we're not really going to discuss the services and supports that should be part of those case plans. Instead, we're going to talk more about how to develop and monitor these case plans. So these are provisions A through F, and next. And provisions G through K. Notice that the provisions focus largely on family involvement and attention to the children, the parent-child relationship, and the family as a whole. Next. Provision A, intensive case management and coordinated case planning. So this really gets at the heart of this work. Good case plans include and coordinate services for children, parents, and family members, and they receive those services across service systems. The services included are those that are indicated based on valid and reliable assessments, and the case plan is monitored and amended as needed to ensure that the family continues to receive the services they need. Next. And provision B, family involvement in case planning, focuses on family involvement in case plans, actually asking and honoring what parents, children, and youth tell you they need to be healthy and well. And as we talk today, Kelly and I recognize that each of the core agencies, child welfare, treatment, the courts, schools, and others, have obligations to include certain things in case plans. What we want to encourage you to do, however, is to work with families to identify and leverage their strengths. And we want you to be flexible. Listen to what they tell you they want to work on first. Use your motivational interviewing skills to negotiate how these plans are implemented. We're going to talk more about that. Next, please. So these are the 5 points we want all of you to walk away with today. And we're going to talk about each of them in greater depth. First, case plans are developed with the parent, the child if appropriate, and the family of choice. Services included in the case plan are based on valid and reliable assessments. Case plan activities prioritize a high level of parent-child interaction. Fourth, the goal is to get the parents, children, and families into treatment services quickly and to help them engage and complete these services. And finally, that the case plan should be reviewed and updated regularly. Next. So as we embark on this discussion, I want to remind all of us about SAMHSA's definition of recovery. Recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live self-directed lives, and strive to reach their full potential. Too often in treatment courts, not quite yet, too often in treatment courts and in the other work we do with people who have substance use disorders, we've become focused on negative drug screens, days of abstinence, and attendance at treatment or recovery support meetings. And all of those things are important indicators of engagement. But recovery is about the whole person. It's about their physical and mental health in addition to their use of addictive substances. It's about having full lives with their families and in their communities. It really is about having a reason to get up in the morning and wanting to engage in a healthy life. And so when we talk about comprehensive, family-centered, trauma-informed case plans, we're talking about case plans that attend to the whole person and to their family system. And with that, let me hand this off to Kelly. We're going to stay on this slide though. Kelly.
The Jefferson County Family Treatment Court shifted the focus on purely compliance to really focusing on the family needs as a whole. The team refocused the case plans and phase structure to put more of an emphasis on health, home, community, and purpose, SAMHSA's 4 dimensions of recovery. It was very clear after reviewing our outcomes that if these 4 areas were not successfully addressed, it was likely that reunification would not be achieved or the family would re-enter the system shortly after closing. We started to look at our phases as an outline for the behavior and lifestyle changes that are necessary for reunification and recovery. When we stuck to really rigid phase structure, some parents were getting through the phases, but reunification wasn't happening. Or parents checked all the boxes of the phases and graduated, but quickly came back into the system. This changed dramatically when we started focusing more on the family as a whole, looking at real behavior change and lifestyle change and those 4 dimensions of recovery. The Colorado Safety Assessment and Risk Assessment are completed at the onset of the case. These are research-based assessments that help gather the information needs early in the case. A comprehensive social history is also completed at the onset of the case, and this information is also used to develop that case plan. Our treatment court modified the phase structure to ensure that we are addressing health, home, community, and purpose throughout the case, and that parents aren't exiting the family treatment court without getting support in those areas, especially when those have been identified through those assessment tools and that social history. Next slide, please. It also became very apparent that we needed to involve parents and children in that case planning process. That starts with the assessments and the social history. Families are a part of that whole process. We also have what we call a welcome meeting with the family's team to talk about the needs of the family. Caseworkers will meet individually with parents to discuss their case plan, and the case plan is then shared with all the other providers and stakeholders. This process isn't always perfect. However, we built in other opportunities to talk about that case plan as we move forward. So following that initial discussion, there are monthly meetings to discuss the progress on the case plan, any concerns or lack of movement on that case plan. This is to make sure that we really are addressing the needs of the family as a whole and providing the right level of care. Children who are too young to participate in the development of their own case plan are assessed quickly for services needs. This includes attachment-based services, developmental, social, emotional, medical, dental needs. And once the children are assessed and promptly referred to services, and then parents are a part of this entire process. And those services for the children are also reviewed on a monthly basis to make sure that kids are in the right level of care as well. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Kelly. So we actually know how to improve outcomes for parents, children, and families involved in child welfare and affected by substance use. Active family involvement in case planning, more frequent and higher quality family or parenting time, and quick access to appropriate treatment services. We're going to talk about each of these, but as you see, an examination of child welfare case files found that robust family involvement in case planning and in supported quality parenting time produced better child welfare outcomes. If you're interested in learning more about how to increase family voice in case planning, take a look at the Administration for Children and Families information memo that I think Erica just dropped into the chat for folks. Next, please. Think about the families you work with. How many systems are touching these families? How many of these systems have active case plans and/or expectations for engagement in particular services? Now ask yourself, what are you doing to reduce case planning burdens on these families? As the parents, children, and family members encounter each of these systems, are they asked to tell their story over and over again? Are they assessed using different instruments that are ultimately seeking the same information? Have you sat down and tried to line up what is expected by child welfare, probation, the courts, treatment, school, and healthcare systems? You know, we have training, education, reliable transportation and phone service. We have hopefully safe and warm homes with electricity, and we're not worried about how we're going to feed our children and ourselves. But many of the families we work with contend with one or more of these barriers. How can we reasonably expect them to manage all of these case plans, to engage in all of the services and all of the appointments? We, the systems and individuals working with these families, have to do better. We have to make this process easier, less traumatic, and ultimately more effective. So as you're thinking about, what changes am I going to make? Really, I ask you, what role can you play in supporting coordination of these services and supports to increase family success? Next, please. So let's start with evidence-based collaborative case planning processes. Does your jurisdiction support case planning processes such as family group decision-making, family team meetings, family group conferencing? All of these are structured, facilitated processes that actively engage parents, children, if developmentally appropriate, and family identified support systems. And they identify the strengths and the needs of the family. They help us make shared decisions about the timing or order of the services provided, and they create shorter, more achievable milestones within the comprehensive case plan so that families don't become overwhelmed and discouraged. Next, please. If you want families to engage in services, you need to spend time and effort figuring out how to better coordinate what the various systems and providers are asking families to do. We recognize that interagency service coordination and communication is challenging, but it's also really critical to improve collaboration in this way to support families. And so Kelly is going to share a little bit about how they've worked this out and how to accomplish it. Next, please.
So after seeing that initial data and realizing that we weren't achieving those outcomes we wanted, it became important that we met with each stakeholder to discuss how to create coordinated and family-centered case plans. We recognize that each agency is required to have a case plan and a treatment plan. However, the stakeholders were still able to come together and then discuss how do we best support families involved in these multiple systems? How do we streamline services and not have competing requirements or duplicating requirements in those plans? These discussions were initiated by talking about the agreed upon outcomes and recognizing that all agencies have the same final goal for the family and for the community. Human Services was able to work with the providers and other stakeholders to ensure case plans are shared across agencies and that there's ongoing communication regarding progress, strengths, parental protective capacity, any concerns, and other recommendations. The team and stakeholders agreed this is the responsibility of the team to ensure that parents understand their case plan and have a voice in what's included. An example of this working really well is the way that we work with probation. Probation has their own requirements and goals. However, many of those requirements are the same and the overall goal is the same. So probation is part of the team. They keep the team up to date on legal proceedings and basically tell their client, if you're in compliance with treatment court, you're going to be in compliance with your probation requirements as well. And probation officers provide additional resources that other agencies might not have access to, which then just becomes an added benefit. When there's a concern about compliance, this can be more challenging. However, the team works together to address that issue with the family. There's a high level of communication amongst the team members regarding the level of treatment and service recommendation based on those evidence-based assessments. So all parents have access to that early assessment for services and level of care recommendations, and so do children. Early access to developmental screenings, educational, social emotional assessments, and evaluations. The team also adopted an evidence-based parenting curriculum that involves both the parents and the children. And you can involve kin and other family members if that's appropriate as well. There's also screening and assessment for attachment-based services for the family if we recognize that that's a better need for the family. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Kelly. So you just heard Kelly reference the variety of assessments they use to determine what parents, children, and the family need to become healthy and whole. And I want to talk a little bit more about the value, the importance of assessment-driven case planning. Next, please. I want you to reflect on your own experience or process for developing case plans. Do you have a case plan template? Something that already includes most or all of the things you're going to ask the parent, child, or family to do. Not going to ask you to raise your hand. You can make your own judgment about how often you rely on a standard case plan rather than one that is truly unique to the particular individual or family. But even families that share a history of involvement in child protective services with parents who have a moderate to severe substance use disorder have unique strengths and needs that should be driving the case plan. We've learned that we need to assess for the level of care needed and provide the individual with that level of care. Not one that's lower because we want to see if maybe that'll work, or one that's higher because, of course, everyone who enters a family treatment court must need to start at residential. We need to get the level of care right, and we need to get the breadth of individual and family treatment and supportive services right. Research, and I would argue your own experience, tells us that individuals and families often receive a set of treatment and other services that look pretty much identical to other families, which tells us that we're most likely not helping families get what they actually need. Next, please. So what do our families need? We need to assess for the needs of the parent, the child, and the family as a whole, as well as, the other family members that support this. So if we've got a grandparent, an uncle, a cousin who is a strategic part of this family support system, we may need to think about what those folks need to be part of this recovery and safety plan for the family. So we need to think about that whole family, all of that group. And we need to think about, what are the assessments that you're using to determine family needs? Who are your partners? Our families need a wide variety of clinical, educational, vocational, and community supports. Do you have an active 3-tiered governance structure of a core team, steering committee, that's usually the supervisors of the core team members, plus some other key community resource stakeholders, and an executive oversight team? It's partnerships nurtured through this governance structure that helps you deliver the kinds of resources and supports your children, parents, and families need. Next, please. Our housing, public health, the early childhood and public school system, the faith community, the hospital, local government, are all of these part of your steering and/or your executive oversight committees? Looking at the list of services on these 2 slides, you can see that you really have this need for a broad community coalition. I want to take a minute and just recommend there's a brand new resource from the National Center on Substance Abuse and Child Welfare on family-centered practice. And I think that Erica just dropped that link into the chat. So do take a look at that. That is hot off the presses and really does a nice job of talking about how to access this breadth of services. Next, please. I include this here as a reminder that if we don't help our families resolve fundamental needs like safe and affordable housing, food security, personal safety, our parent participants and children are not going to be able to attend to the substance use and mental health treatment and parenting education we need them to complete as part of their case plan. Plans of safe care that help pregnant and postpartum moms, infants, and families meet all their healthcare treatment and critical care needs are a really nice example of this kind of comprehensive case plan that takes into account all these aspects of well-being for the parent and the child. Next, please. This isn't a presentation about phases or milestones, but as you've heard, Kelly has talked about how that fits into case plans a couple of times. And as you think about case planning and completion of case plan tasks, I want to remind you that it's not simply attendance at parenting time or parenting classes or treatment groups that we need to care about. It's the demonstration of skills and competencies. And that's why it's so critical that parenting time be in as natural a setting and include parenting tasks like taking their children to the doctor, parent-teacher conferences, morning and bedtime routines, even grocery shopping, instead of an hour at McDonald's or 3 hours at the local park. Parents and children need to practice real family life, and case plan tasks and phases or milestone completion needs to be about demonstrated competence, not just time or attendance. As a family treatment court, you need to consider how are you assessing for competence, not just attendance. Next, please.
So Human Services is really utilizing that safety assessment and risk assessment to develop the case plan and identify those basic needs as well as other needs for a family up front. That comprehensive social history is also gathered to get more information, and this really helps kind of personalize that case plan. All parents have access to the substance use disorder assessment, and the providers use evidence-based assessments, including a trauma assessment, a domestic violence assessment, to make recommendations based on the level of treatment needed. So providers can also make recommendations for other assessments or other services based on that initial information that they're gathering from the parent and also gathering from collateral. Children will have their access to their assessments and screenings, and then this information is used to drive their case plan. We frequently reassess these goals with the families as needed. This is especially helpful if we're feeling really stuck and not seeing the progress that we were hoping to see, or if providers need to take another look at the level of treatment and reassess and provide some other recommendations. I also wanted to note here that we really have utilized our governance structure and committees to help move towards utilizing this unified case plan with all of our stakeholders and ensuring that we have the access to all the services that families need. It's been extremely beneficial to have the Executive Oversight Committee to discuss any barriers or challenges to this process, and we work through those together. And then the steering committee really takes this and puts it into action in the court. Next slide, please.
So what does it mean to have a high level of parent-child interaction? And how do we build this into our case plans? Next, please. If we want to nurture emotional competence and empathy in parents and children and parenting competence in families, we need to ensure that parents, children, and families are given frequent opportunities for interaction for periods of time that are developmentally appropriate and safe for children. Just as we saw in the earlier slide examining child welfare case files, we know that child welfare outcomes are improved when there is a high level of parent-child interaction. But it's also important to remember that substance use and mental health treatment outcomes are also improved when parents are provided frequent and quality parenting time with their children. Our identities as parents are fundamental to our ability to live a recovery-oriented lifestyle. Next, please. So these are the recommended guidelines for parenting time by age of the child. Are your families given these opportunities? Often when we present this, I have this, collective intake of breath. But if you're not right now able to do this, really ask, how can you partner to increase the amount of quality parent-child time? Ultimately, it's more helpful to have more frequent, shorter periods of time versus less frequent, longer periods. So thinking about what are the barriers, really use that governance structure to reduce or eliminate the barriers to frequent and quality parenting time. I also want to remind folks that family time is a right of the child. It's not an incentive or a sanction given to a parent. And it's not to be withheld in the early phases of participation or withheld pending some period of negative drug screens. It's our task to ensure family time happens safely. So if you have concerns about a parent's continued substance use, then we need to really assess the risk and place greater safety and supervision parameters around that parenting time, but not necessarily withhold it. Next, please. So what are your and your collaborative partners doing to engage fathers? We know that when we actively engage fathers and the father's family, that we have more reunifications and fewer adoptions, that we have substantially lower likelihood of later maltreatment allegations, and we have more rapid exits from foster care for children. And with that, I hand it to Kelly. Next slide, please.
Ensuring quality parenting time and a focus on having frequent, meaningful conversations about parenting time was a goal of our treatment court. Our treatment court was able to attend a training with parenting time experts to help our team shift to using a research-based observation tool during that supervised parenting time that would help really lead to those meaningful conversations about when is it safe to increase parenting time and lessen the level of supervision. The training also focused on how do we increase the use of kinship and family to safely supervise parenting time in the most natural environment. The tools take into account both the observations of the parent's ability to meet their child's need during that time and the children's reaction to parenting time. It takes into account the child's lens and their need for that quality, frequent contact with their parents. Our family treatment court also puts an emphasis on ensuring that parents are actively involved in their children's services throughout the case. So parents are able to attend medical appointments, dental, developmental, educational services when it's safe to do so. The team works very closely with the child's placement provider, either kinship or foster care, to ensure that it's possible and encourage that families are a part of all of these activities with their children. We encourage parents' participation in those day-to-day activities with their kids, like doing homework, soccer practice, going to school events, anything that's really natural for that family. Next slide.
Thanks. So going back to our list of critical elements of effective case plans, we have 1, develop the case plans with the parent, child if appropriate, and family of choice. 2, include only those services that are based on valid and reliable assessments. 3, prioritize a high level of parent-child interaction. And 4, now we want to talk about getting parents, children, and families into treatment services quickly and helping them engage and complete these services. Next, please. Engagement. Positive, you can do it engagement needs to be the focus of all of your collaborative partners when meeting and working with families. There is so much stigma and shame attached to child neglect or abuse associated with parental substance use. But we know that 60 to 80% of child welfare cases have parental substance use or co-occurring disorders as the underlying cause of the neglect or abuse. So we've got to address this without judgment. Have you done a walkthrough of your child welfare to court to treatment systems? Is it welcoming for all families, regardless of age, race, ethnicity, gender, or family composition? Have you considered whether a parent, child, or family that has experienced trauma and may feel shame will feel safe and encouraged? The families we work with have frequently experienced failure. It's your job, individually and collectively, to let these parents, children, and families know that you believe in them, that you believe they can recover and parent safely and lovingly, that children and families can be happy and whole. You have to believe in them when they're scared to believe in themselves. When we approach families with judgment or with overwhelmingly complex and numerous case plans, the family is much more likely to shut down, to disappear, or seek to actually undermine that case plan. Next, please. We have a variety of studies that demonstrate that the faster we engage a parent in treatment, the more likely that parent is to remain in treatment. The longer someone remains engaged in treatment, the more likely that person is to complete the treatment. And treatment completion is directly related to better child welfare outcomes, including reunification and a reduction in reoccurrence of maltreatment or a return to care. If that's the case, are you measuring the time it takes to get folks into treatment? What can you do at child welfare, at referral, in the courts, and in the treatment to reduce the time to treatment engagement? Next, please. Peer recovery support specialists are one way that we have found to get really effective treatment engagement. As we look across family treatment courts, we see that those family treatment courts that effectively engage peer recovery support specialists to do early and continued engagement with parents are more successful at admitting more parents earlier in the case helping those parents engage with treatment and community supports and develop a healthy, recovery-oriented lifestyle. In a randomized control, next please. So in this randomized control trial of about 3,400 parents in Cook County, Illinois, they expected to find that if they completed comprehensive screening and assessment and ensured that parents accessed treatment early, that recovery and child welfare outcomes would be good, right? I've just shown you several studies that suggest that should be the case. Next, please. But what Cook found was that the recovery coach was essentially the secret sauce to really ensure those great recovery and child welfare outcomes. Peer recovery support specialists engage parents. They connect them to treatment and community-based recovery systems. And they're a safe and supportive person that they can go to and find some answers and get some support. Next, please. And check out this research that comes out of the regional partnership grants examining median length of stay in treatment. Parent participants who received intensive case management and recovery coaches remained in treatment on average 70 days longer, or for an average of 200 days. Next, please. And then this research examining treatment completion. Look at the difference between intensive case management alone and intensive case management with recovery coaches. All right, next, please, and to Kelly.
So parents have this access to the substance use treatment specialist at the onset of this case. They're coming in right at that very first hearing and talking to parents about the benefit of engaging in treatment early. And peer recovery specialists are also available at the onset of the case. The majority of our treatment providers have now hired peer specialists to help support parents throughout the case. Human Services, Child Welfare has also hired a peer support specialist who facilitates several Circle of Parents groups and recently started a peer group specifically for our family treatment court. The focus of this peer group is to provide an introduction to all the different community recovery supports to our parents. The overall goal is to help parents make connections to the recovery community that will last. And we know that this information and support is more powerful and more meaningful when it's coming from a peer. The Office of Respondent Parent Council has also hired peer supports for parents. And our data shows that our outcomes for dads are lower than for moms in our family treatment courts. Engaging dads has been an ongoing goal for our courts. Our preferred treatment providers have gender-specific treatment, and they've hired male peer supports and dads. Jefferson County also has a fatherhood program, and we're working to build our collaboration to help support fathers. The Office of Respondent Parent Council, they also hired a male peer support to really help engage fathers. And from my perspective, the families who are engaging in consistent peer support are more likely to be successful and complete their case plan and not re-enter the system. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Kelly. So as we come kind of to the close of this, let's talk about how case plans are only effective when we review and update them regularly. Next, please. So good comprehensive case plans are living documents. They're responsive to the changing needs of parents, children, and the family. And I recommend that you revisit the case plan at phase or milestone changes. Or if you've got, as Kelly mentioned, if you've got a situation where things are just really not working, those are times to go back and revisit that case plan. But when we're looking at these kind of natural transitions at phase or milestone changes, we really recommend that you sit down with the parent and the children and family as appropriate, and to reflect on what's been accomplished, what's been going well, and then also talk about what happens next. Ask your parent participant to commit to the next steps in their case plan. This process of reflection on what they have already done and commitment to what they're going to do empowers the parent to take responsibility for their own well-being and that of their children and family. Next, please. And sort of a final sort of admonition, a final thought about all of this. You've heard the expression, the best laid plans of mice and men. Our phases, milestones, and typical case plan activities, they are research-informed approaches that work for most of our families. But they're not going to work for all of your families. Each parent, participant, and family is unique, and you're going to need to make changes occasionally to meet the parent or participant where she or he is. You may need to prioritize parent-child therapy or evidence-based parenting, and then ease into treatment services, for instance. Use your motivational interviewing skills to work with parents to determine what they are motivated to do. The goal of our comprehensive case plans, phases, and milestones is to support parents, children, and families to become healthy and whole. And that means we may need to do a little work in negotiation with our families as we move through this process. And Kelly, I hand it to you, please.
Thank you. So our team recently started using a motivational interviewing tool called the 5 Whats. So parents identify their 5 whats and identify one step or one thing that they can do to reach that goal. So we believe that this tool will be really helpful in engaging parents in their case plan and also informing the team of the participants and the parents' priority. This has been really helpful, especially when participants identify those basic needs early on. This exercise has also helped the team understand what stage of change the participant is in and what steps they're ready to take right now. So it's very helpful. We think it's going to help us create those case plans with the parent voice. And this is also something that we can use to update the case plan over time. So shifting the way we define success has also been really helpful in engaging families. We have phase structure, and that gives us that outline of what we hope to see at each point in the case. But seeing the actual behavior and lifestyle change in action has been the most meaningful way to make decisions around reunification and successful case closure. We have several families who don't quite reach graduation or what we call recovery commencement, as they didn't check every single phase requirement box. However, they achieved the goals of their case plan and they demonstrated the behaviors that indicate long-term success in recovery. We also look at children's progress on their case plan and that parent-child relationship to help make that decision. So even though they didn't technically graduate from the treatment court, child well-being and safety has been achieved, and parents are living their recovery plan, and that is the success. I did want to note that this has taken years of work. It's not perfect, it's not easy, but it's really worth the effort to figure this out. Our team can really look at that exact moment in time when we made these changes, and we can see the outcomes for families significantly improve. We truly believe that it's our job to make this work for families. And our families see the court as a team that will provide them with the support and services needed for long-term success and well-being. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Next, please. Next. So over these next couple of slides, we have provided the citations for the research that we discussed throughout the presentation. And we also wanted to call your attention to a couple of different resources that are available, things that we did not drop into the chat. This is 3 different briefs from the statewide system improvement. They really talk about how state and local leaders need to work together to achieve systems change. And that's really what we're talking about when we talk about these shifts in practice to get to comprehensive case plans. Next. We also want to invite you to access any of our many Family Treatment Court Learning Academy webinars. They include team discussion guides that help you adapt and adopt your practices to improve outcomes. These are great ways to do lunch and learns and to really move towards that continuous quality improvement that we talked about. Next, please. These next couple of resources are terrific ways to just sort of help different members on the team improve their understanding of family treatment court practice, improve their understanding of the partners that are involved in this community collaborative. Next, please. We have this one on better understanding of treatment. And next, really recommend this really useful guide talking about supporting parents, moms, pregnant moms with opioid use disorders, looking at how to develop and how to work with plans of safe care. If you don't know what a plan of safe care is, or your family treatment court is not working with those, I encourage you to reach out to child welfare and to your hospital delivery, labor and delivery groups to talk about what those are and how your family treatment court can connect to plans of safe care. Next, please. And finally, just one set of resources here from the National Center on Substance Abuse and Child Welfare. These are online tutorials that really help folks do that cross-system learning that's so critical to the community collaborative that is a family treatment court. And next, please. And these are contact information for me at Center for Children and Family Futures and for Kelly there at the Fit Court in Golden, Colorado. And with that, I think I'm handing to Erica. Thanks.
Thank you, Sherston and Kelly, for all of the great information that you shared with us today. And I'm confident that everyone learned something today. I know I learned a lot. We have a number of questions from the audience, and I'm going to start with one that a couple of audience members wanted to know from Kelly. So people wanted to know if the parenting time observation tool that you referenced, whether that is something that is available to them, whether it's publicly available, and if so, where can they find out more about it? So Kelly.
You know, I'm actually not sure if that's publicly available. Sherston, I might have to do some follow-up with you. I think someone from your office may have reached out to them to see if that's something that can be shared. I know our copy kind of had a specific, draft, and I think that's changed over time. So we may have to follow up on that.
Okay. Thank you.
I wrote it down.
Thank you, Kelly. So the next question, Sherston, I think this is for you. Are there examples of unified case plans that are out there that people can use as a reference?
It's always the perennial question people call unified case plans, like the unicorn of social work. But there are some examples, some tools that we have worked with sites to develop that are actually focused around the 4 domains. That's a really useful way to bring case plans together under those 4 domains for the parent and the child and the family that way. So I recommend kind of thinking about it that way. There is no sort of perfect form that I can send you, but I think that that's probably the most useful way to think about it. And obviously also some of our processes that we talked about, that family group decision-making, child and family teams, some of those I think are also really good structures to get to that comprehensive case plan. You can bring those different case plans to that meeting and really use that time to organize and to prioritize how you're going to pull those things together.
Thank you. All right, well, so the next question is around information sharing. And so this audience member wanted to know, and I think well, let's start with Kelly, and then maybe if you both want to respond, you can. But so this person says one of the biggest challenges is around when a parent refuses to sign a release of information between systems, and this impedes providing an accurate and competent assessment and treatment case plan. And so this person would like to know, do you have any suggestions for just how to work with when faced with this kind of scenario?
Sure, so I can start with kind of what we do in Jefferson County. So we do have a waiver and a release of information that parents sign when they choose to enter the treatment court. I think we rely pretty heavily on our parent attorneys to talk through parents about why it's so important to sign those releases so all the agencies can communicate. I think it's pretty rare after an attorney talks with a parent about the benefits of how we have to kind of have that shared information to progress in a treatment court. It's pretty rare that a parent refuses to sign. And I think there's other opportunities where treatment will ask a parent to sign a release to maybe their health provider or their prescriber. Sometimes those get a little bit more complicated. And I think, again, we really rely on our respondent parent council to talk with parents about how important it is that we have all of the information that we can share it to make the best decisions.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I agree. I think in most cases, family treatment courts are voluntary. And as such, signing those releases of information are just a piece of what you're sort of agreeing to do. Using motivational interviewing, using really having those parent attorneys talk to parents about that value, reassure them about how the releases are used and what is shared and what's not shared, I think. And I think sometimes treatment can really help with that. There are trying to address misinformation, maybe trying to address maybe a bad experience that someone might have had or perceives that they had in shared information can also help with some of that. And yeah, walking folks through that process.
Thank you. So the next question is, and I hope I'm capturing this correctly, it looks like some of it might have gotten cut off here in the chat, but this person would like to know when they are experiencing not optimal cooperation between placements and with the court and departmental requests, that sometimes they have experienced needing to switch the placement, but they try not to do that because of just the disruptions that it caused. And so they were asking for if you just have some troubleshooting tips around that. And I'll just say, if the person who typed that question, if I didn't capture it completely, feel free to add in the Q&A and we can address the follow-ups for you.
I'm going to pass that to Kelly first, because Kelly's worked directly in child welfare, and I think may have some more experience-based recommendations.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm not understanding this correctly, but there definitely have been times where placement maybe isn't on board with everything that we're kind of asking. And I think what helps is kind of addressing those things upfront very early on, if possible, at the time of placement or very shortly after the child is placed. We have created some kind of like guides for kinship and foster care about the family treatment court and kind of what our overall goals are, what our expectations are, what this is going to look like. So some of those pieces around, we want parents involved in every step of the way. Let's figure out a way to safely do that. And I think the earlier we're having those conversations, the better. But yeah, those challenges do come up. We also created kind of some agreements that either the foster provider or the kinship provider does with the parent if they're going to be supervising any parenting time. Or really, their involvement, and we let them kind of come up with the agreement, and then we have some standard ones, and that kind of helps. So when things do come up and there's challenges, we can come back to that agreement and say, here's what you guys came up with. Do we need to modify that, or do we just need like a refresher on, what everybody agreed to in order to make sure that this is safe and successful? Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think what you said, Kelly, was so critical, that really setting expectations at the beginning, letting resource families know from the very beginning, before we even place the child, that this family is involved in the family treatment court. The plan is for reunification. We are going to be working with this parent, working with these children. We're going to expect a high level of interaction between the parents and children, and lots of services and supports. But the goal here is to reunify, is to reunify the children and the parents. And I think often when we see real challenges in that resource family and the birth family and the treatment court, it's when that resource family may have a different expectation for what is going to be the outcome of that case for the child's placement.
Thank you. So we have a couple of questions from the audience about peer support specialists. So I'm going to try to combine a couple of these into one. And I'll start with Kelly. So somebody here would like to know whether you provide any gender-specific peer support, and then combining it with the second question that we received about, can you comment on just what the lived experience of the peer support specialists typically looks like with the people that you employ?
Sure. So I'm employed with judicial, so I am not working directly with our peer supports, but both of our treatment providers that we use have hired peer supports, and they have male and female peer supports. They have parents, they have some who are not parents. And so I think then they just kind of work with the parent to find the best fit in a peer support. I think that's still something that we're trying to build up. Human Services has hired a parent support specialist, and she, I believe, has 19 years of sobriety. She's a parent. She's been raising her grandchildren, so she's been through the system. Her children have been through the system. So lots of lived experience, and she shares a lot of that. And I think we're, again, trying to build up our peer support so we have more diversity in peers, and just kind of using what we have, the best that we have right now. One of our providers has actually hired 2 of our graduates from our family treatment court. So that's just been an added benefit for us. So, because when we're looking for peers, we really are looking for someone who's been through the child welfare system, has had, pretty significant recovery and connection to that recovery community.
Thank you. That's perfect. So the next question is around the current times we're in right now with regards to the pandemic, and they were hoping for some guidance around how to overcome barriers to parenting time in the context of COVID.
Kelly, do you want to talk about what you've done, and then I can also talk about some of the national trends, or How do you want to?
Sure. Yeah, I can start. I think this has been extremely complicated, and our team has been so creative in the way that they're doing parenting time. It's been so challenging with infants and very young children doing virtual parenting time. And unfortunately, sometimes that's just the way it kind of has to be to keep everybody safe. They've done some really great things about making sure that a book is provided to the kinship provider or foster care, and then the parent has a book and they can read a book together during virtual parenting time. Even playing like a board game virtually with some older children just to kind of keep that engagement. And then I think, again, they've been very creative on trying to get in-person time and making that safely happen when possible and reducing the amount of household that's involved. And of course, they're taking, safety is of utmost importance, but there's been times that, a parent can go to the kinship home and have parenting time, and then the case manager who's supervising or, popping in and observing appears virtually. And that's worked, and that they've, again, been very creative with how to make that work.
Yeah, I think, the books are one of my favorite things, and that holds whether we're in COVID times or back in whatever will be our recovered times after that follows. So each the resource family and the parent each having that book and reading those books. I think that we have found some new and fabulous ways to connect parents and children. Certainly infants has been really hard. I know a lot of treatment courts have, and their collaborative partners have really examined, particularly they thought at the beginning, but are really trying to think about, can we safely move to reunify the parent and the child or children? Can we ensure that safety, but really, maybe all of the pieces, parts are still in that process, but have looked to go ahead and reunify. In other cases, we are, I know that the winter, the cold snap has made outdoor visitation really hard, but finding ways to be silly and socially distant, but in person. It's not all the hugs and the kisses and the loving that we're all craving from our friends and family, but it sure is better than not being together. I know that as I talk with teams, they're really thinking about what comes next and thinking about trying to increase parent and child connection, continuing to use some of these virtual bedtime routines, virtual morning routines. But as we do that, we can't lose sight of, we've got to go back to that high quality, frequent in-person parenting and family time. They're really, that is what we need to get back to. We will get there. So I think as I talk with teams across the country, that's a little bit of worry that they have. They're ready to make the most of this virtual time, but a little afraid and really want to get back to that robust in-person time.
Thank you. So we have a question from someone asking, is there an outline or training for facilitating family treatment courts? And so my initial response to that is to refer folks back to some of the pages, Kirsten, that you had provided at the end of your presentation, where there's links to webinars and other information from the Center for Children and Family Futures. But is there anything else that you would like to add there in response to that question, or does that cover it, just what you provided in the slides?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understand the question. Facilitating family treatment courts, so being a coordinator, or are we talking about facilitating those comprehensive case plan meetings?
Yeah, you know, the question doesn't specify. So, so the person who wrote that, if you'd like to write a follow-up question, we can try to address it further. So
Yeah, as far as family treatment courts, definitely those resources throughout and available on the Children and Family Futures Family Drug Court Training and Technical Assistance web pages are terrific. As far as facilitation, those evidence-based facilitated case planning meetings there's some really terrific trainings that you can go through and be certified to facilitate those meetings.
So somebody here wants to know, do you use the MRT model for your participants and their families?
Kelly, do you want to address that?
Yes, our treatment providers offer MRT, and we have had parents participate on that if it's recommended. But yes, it is offered.
And we recommend the same, that if that is appropriate based on assessment, that folks access MRT.
And someone else would like to know, do either of you have experience collaborating between family drug court and reentry services for people who are leaving incarceration?
Kelly, do you all ever do that?
You know, I'm not specifically. I think we definitely have parents who are incarcerated at the time of, opening of the dependency neglect case. And we work very closely with whoever else is kind of involved with that participant at the time. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's any like policy around that. And we definitely need a participant to be able to participate in the court in a certain amount of time. So that's part of our policy. But yeah, we definitely do have parents who exit incarceration and enter the family treatment court.
Yeah, and I would say that if you have one parent, for instance, who is incarcerated and another that is going through the family treatment court, if those times coincide, part of your case planning, part of your services and supports would be looking at bringing that parent back into the family system, if that's appropriate.
Thank you. And Kirsten, this one's back to you. I got some clarification on that earlier question. So the person was asking about, are there trainings that you can recommend for facilitating family team meetings?
Yes, yeah, those are available. If you sort of Google those and look for family group conferencing, family team decision making, those are, there's training for those, training to facilitate child and family teams, and just kind of look through there.
Thank you. And another follow-up question about relating to COVID and the pandemic. So if a parent or child wants to see each other in person in a safe and socially distant manner, do they have the right to do that, meaning that they would be opting out of virtual visits?
I guess I'm not sure if I understand the question. We want to facilitate frequent parenting, and that during this time, that's probably going to be some mix of socially distant and virtual. If you can figure out how to make all socially distant parenting time work, then that's great. Maybe I'm not following the question. And Kelly, you might have a different take on that.
In our community, the discussions have really started. So the court and human services, work together to discuss safety and in-person parenting time. And then there was a judicial order that everybody had to follow. But that doesn't mean that if somebody has an idea on how to have safe parenting time, that they can't present that to the court or, get approval to do that. But really, people were asked to follow that judicial order, and that's, shifted with the way things look in our community.
Okay, and we're just coming to the close of our event. I'm going to ask one last question, and then we're going to move on into the document downloads and just wrap up. So one of our audience members wants to know, is there a specific release for relatives that are willing to work with the court on the combined case plan?
Kelly, I don't know. They would be invited, parent supports or family supports are to be invited by the family themselves. So they are part of that process. Kelly, did you do something different when you were in child welfare?
Yeah, if a family member wants to be kind of part of the communication and, is a big part of the kiddo's life, then sometimes we'll ask a parent to sign a release with some specific things that we're able to share. And then there's other opportunities if family is a placement provider to become a party to the case. And of course that's legal and I won't get into that. That's not my role, but that there is that opportunity and then they get more information. And that's usually when they're the placement provider for the child. I believe it's called a special respondent to the case. But lots of times, other parents or other family members are very involved and we want to encourage that. And parents are welcome to bring those family members to team meetings if they're comfortable doing that. And then if the parent wants information shared to, their mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, brother, sister, then they can sign a release with the things that they're comfortable with the caseworker sharing.
Great, thank you. So we're at the close now of the Q&A section. I once again, on behalf of the Gain Center, I wanted to thank Kirsten Freskin and Kelly Sutton for all of the information and insights they've shared with us today. So thank you both for your presentation and for taking time to answer some of our questions. For those of you out in the audience, you should have seen a file transfer box pop up on your screen right now. So this is where you can use this to download the two documents. So the first is the Family Treatment Court Best Practice Standards. If you'd like to download that, go ahead and select that document name and you'll see the download button turn a darker gray. And if you just click download, it'll download to your computer. The second document there is the certificate of attendance if you'd like to have that. Once again, this is not for CEU or CE credits, it's just for your personal portfolio. But if you'd like to have that, go ahead and select that one as well, and it will also download to your computer. You should also see the last poll for the day popping up, and if you would like to provide any input about additional TA or other areas where you would like related information, please go ahead and indicate that on the poll, and this information will be shared with SAMHSA. We also have some webinars coming up that I'd like to let you know about, one later this week on supporting peers who provide services at Intercept One, and then two events in March, one on innovations to support drug treatment court programs during COVID-19 with a focus on technology, and one event on early diversion and strategies for addressing treatment engagement challenges. So if you'd like to join the Gain Center listserv to receive our e-news and other announcements, registration information for all of those events are included on the via the listserv. And this is the address here that you can use to sign up to receive our mailings if you wish. And finally, here is some contact information if you would like to reach us here at the Gain Center, or if you'd like to reach SAMHSA directly. All of the contact information is provided here on the screen. And once again, thank you to everybody who attended today, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. I hope you have a great afternoon. Bye.